Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mo on the Mic. Today, we're talking about neurodivergence and creative spaces. Let's get mowing. Okay, so first of all, what does creative mean to you, and when did you first realize you were one?
Creative, I think, is more than just like having a bit of a spark. Like, I feel like anyone can be creative in ways, but I feel like to be a creative is like a different thing. So, like, creativity to me is doing anything that's kind of artsy in any way. So, photography, videography, painting, writing, even reading, that's all creativity to me. But to be a creative, I feel like you kind of have to go down specifically a route or two, however many, doesn't really matter, and like kind of just lock in more rather than I think that takes it from the being a hobby and having fun with it to being really passionate and wanting to do something with it. I think that's kind of the main separation of the two. I think I've always been creative, but I've only maybe in the last 10 years considered myself a creative.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I agree with that. There are a lot of people who have like a creative spark or do a creative thing in their spare time. What for me changes that is when it becomes your main thing. So I've always been creative. I mean, I've had a camera in my hand since my first little toy one at 3 years old that I think I got for Christmas. But at some point, in fact, I can pinpoint the exact moment. It was NCA level one, um, when I got the opportunity to be the main photographer for our school's multicultural day. It was at that moment where I realized, hey, this means something. And also, like, hey, I can make a bit of profit here. And that's when it changed into I'm not a creative person. I am a creative. It's the only thing I care about. So, yeah. Awesome. Is there a label like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, something like that that has been helpful for you, or do you prefer not to use labels?
I love labels if they work for you. I think they work for me. I'm being tested currently for ADHD and autism and like a couple of different types of PTSD. And I've been diagnosed with severe social anxiety and depressive episodes. So there's a whole
Mm,
mismatch of stuff going on in here. And I do think the labels have helped me kind of understand which parts of it come from which parts of it, like how I behave and how that connects to whichever thing. Whereas I feel like if I didn't have those labels to refer to, or I didn't have these diagnoses, or was on wait lists and stuff for the diagnoses, then I would maybe be like, oh, maybe I'm just like not a nice person. Maybe it doesn't come from anywhere. Maybe this is just me. Whereas like understanding that it does come from somewhere, it's never an excuse for any like negative behavior, but it helps you kind of understand the right ways about it and then how to manage it and deal with it in an actual functional way rather than just being like everyone does this, because no, not everyone does, and it's your responsibility to handle it and manage how that goes out to the world.
yeah. No, I agree with that. I have been diagnosed with ADHD. However, between the process of my brother, who's just been diagnosed with ADHD, and also sort of seeing how I react to things and how I have reacted to things, we're now exploring the fact that I actually am more of a high functioning autistic than, or maybe not even that high, like it's more like a mid level autistic than someone who has ADHD. Um, but the one good thing that came from getting that label is it has not excused, but it's explained a lot of what I went through in my school years because I quite often was very misunderstood. It sort of helped me go, okay, while it doesn't excuse the way I was treated, it does explain it. Um,
Mhm.
and having these labels now, people are more willing to be like, oh, okay, that's why you do that. I'll work with you. So, yeah. Um, Sort of leading off of those first two questions, was there a moment where you realized that creativity and neurodiversity sort of connected?
I don't think I can pinpoint an exact moment, but I think it's been really interesting in the kind of process of doing my research about ADHD and autism because I believed I had it and wanted to go to my doctors with proof so that they could see where I was coming from. Within all of that research, I've found a lot of the traits that I have that are creative traits are things that are considered female traits in ADHD and autism, like um, anything to do with like stationery, so like collecting notebooks or color coding all of your pens and stuff, which I would never thought. I just thought that was a normal thing that people did, and then everyone around me is like, no, people just like have a couple of pens and have like one notebook, and I'm like, okay, cool. Obviously, it's not as shallow as just that, but seeing these little things kind of highlight every now and again that like they've got creative interests, they've got this, they have a strong feeling for this, and they want to hoard these things. And you see it more in females when this happens, and you're like, oh, and you start piecing everything together, and then you're looking back on your whole life, and you're like, oh, it goes way back. So I wouldn't say there's like a pinpoint moment, but I think just over the span of the last 6 or 7 years that I've been researching it, I've realized oh, a lot of moments in my life have explained a lot of these traits and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree with that, where there's a lot of traits in myself that I'm like, okay, these creative traits are really common under these labels. But also, there was that thing where the creatives I connect with, there comes a moment where they say something like, oh, by the way, like, even though I do all these creative things, I'm highly socially anxious, or I have autism, I have ADHD. And it's that moment where you're like, oh, that's why our brains work so well together on a creative project, is because we're all thinking in that same way or very similar ways. And it's sort of interesting that a lot of the most highly respected creatives, people will be like, I love their work, but I can never understand the way they live or the way they think. It's because that's not something you're supposed to understand. It's
Mm-hmm.
sort of a way that we, as neurodiverse creatives, express ourselves. So, on that note, do you think that creativity like helps you regulate your emotions, or does your emotion sort of drive the creativity?
I think I think it's both because I've got a few different if I'm going strictly down the photography route, I think my emotions fuel the creativity there. Because I am so passionate and I do love concerts and I enjoy the lighting and the live music and everything. So I think that kind of drives that creativity. But then if you go down the route of me like running my website and having my blog posts and stuff, I think that's then the other way around is where the creativity then brings out how to emotionally talk about these things or how I want things to look or how I want them to be perceived to other people. And I think it's that way around. So I think it depends on which route I'm going down. But yeah, I think emotions and creativity are for sure one in the same.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think so. My first big photography thing that sort of made me realize that this was a moment where other people cared on the internet was actually my NCA level two board, which was entirely done on mental health. It was in the middle of COVID. Nothing felt great in life. I just moved to a new town, and that season of my life, trying to make new friends, was quite a lonely one. Um,
Mhm.
and so my photography was entirely led at that point by the emotions I was feeling, and the photos were quite dark. Um, and I find that the same happens when I review music on the main Groovy Mood post, is especially when we did 5 Sauce Week, I found that there were some writers who wrote consistently about all the different songs. And then for me, if a song subject was sad, then that song review was sad, and then the next song would be a really happy song, and that review was really happy. Um,
Mhm.
I think my creativity is how I express my emotions, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a random assortment of all of the emotions I felt during the creation of that project rather than that project changing how I feel. Like, it does change how I feel once it's done. Like, once I've completed a project, I feel on top of the world. But
Mhm.
that's because I have dumped everything out in my creative process. Yeah. Did school or work nurture your creativity, or did it sort of shut it down more?
That one's hard to tell. Work-wise, like actual paid full-time job type stuff, no, because I work in like hospitality and retail. So like, but in terms of like the creative work that I do, obviously, yes, that has been accepted and widely encouraged. But school, I don't know. There was a lot of like creative courses that we could do. So I could study like textiles, I could study art, I could study photography. There were a lot of creative courses that we could have done. So in that way, it does encourage it because you've got the options of doing these creative things. But I do know that that part of the school was wildly underfunded and not as many people wanted to go for those creative subjects, so the teachers weren't as passionate because you wouldn't have specialist teachers come in and teach it. So it was like kind of like a yes, it was encouraged in the sense of look, you can do it, but not encouraged in the sense of we've got the funding, we've got the resources, we've got everything you need to really pursue it. So that one's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, I mean, growing into an adult and like working in the music industry and having that creative outlet professionally for sure has made like just a massive difference in how I pursue it essentially.
Yeah. I mean, talking about your point of like the lack of funding for the arts, that really is something that we really understand here in New Zealand, especially in the time we're living in. It was, like you said, it was really hard for school to encourage that creativity because it just wasn't there as much as every single sports known to man was an option, as much as every single academic subject was there, even if it was by distance. Um, but when it comes to work, I have only ever worked creative jobs. But even when we didn't have creative subjects, the thing that the teachers will always bring up is if we were doing a speech, I had the most immaculate visual PowerPoint, sometimes hand drawn, although it wasn't that great when it was hand drawn behind me. Like, everything was color coordinated, everything had like a visual story. So I always found a way to have a point of difference and a point of creativity because I could not handle not being the unique one in the situation. So,
Mhm.
um, sort of on that note of work and school, who sort of like got you early on, who understood the way that you had to work these situations?
No one. And I still think that no one really does. Obviously, like when it comes to like my mates supporting what I do, they understand it in that sense of like my friend is doing something they love, I'm gonna support that. But I don't think in the sense of like understanding where it really comes from and understanding how hard I've been doing it and for how long I've been doing it, that's where I think no one really gets it. And I think people also in my life get confused as to why I would choose this route when I could just go down a sciencey route or a mathematic route or a literature route and do something more like practical and more like normal, I guess. That's where a lot of the misunderstanding lies with me because they just can't fathom that what I do isn't a real job,
Mm,
even though I have a real job and I do this and I do that. So it's just like I don't really think anyone, especially not growing up, got it. But I do have a bunch of friends now who are very supportive of what I do and will share and repost and like and hire me for things and stuff. So like it is great. But yeah, growing up, I don't think anyone really got me.
I'd agree with that as well. I don't remember a time where I could sit down and with a friend and even I still find, and I'm so sorry if any of my friends are watching, I love and appreciate you, but I cannot sit down and grab a coffee with you and all talk about our jobs. And you guys are like talking about promotions or big things that they want to do. And I'm sitting there and I bring something up and there's always at least one person at the table who's like, so are you going to start looking for a job? And that is the most painful thing you can say to a creative because it is a job. It is. But you constantly get oh, can you bring your camera to my party? They don't want to pay for your services. Just, hey, here's my birthday. Like, please bring your camera. It would be great to document this. Or, um, hey, I'm struggling with the visuals for this. Do you think you could just like pop on after work and do something? No. There's that expectation of this is easy for you, so you can do it for free for me. Um, and that
Mhm.
really hurts when you're trying to build a solid portfolio. Um, the biggest thing I always say when I meet someone new who really wants to support me, whether that's like a friend, an extended family member, I always say it's not that hard to, if you like something, please make it known. Please press like, please comment, please reshare, because even if you do not have the resources to use our services to buy our pieces that are out there, someone who respects you does. So like it's not that hard to like, comment, share. Um, and that's something that I will forever be grateful for the platform I do have. But I use that as well. Any creative friend, reshare it, acknowledge the platform you have and the fact that you can highlight these smaller creative voices. How can you tell the difference between creative flow and the impending doom of creative burnout?
I think it's the emotion behind it. Like I can lock in and like enter this flow state where I can, make a backlog of 7 or 8 different TikToks, 3 or 4 different blog posts, edit loads of photos, post on all my social medias. And if my emotions are like, this is great, this is fun, this is a stress-free moment, I can really just knuckle down and do it. Whereas if I have to do all of those things and the emotion around it is, ugh, then I'm just like, okay, this is tiring, this is too much, rein it in. So I do think, like, no matter the workload or what you have left to do or what you've already done or whatever it is, I think the main difference for me at least is the emotion that's driving that.
Mm, I'd agree. I think right when I'm sitting on the line of going from flow to burnout, I don't recognize it until it's starting to get too late. Um, because I go from here's an idea to boom, 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 all of these things I'm working on at the same time. And then suddenly it's like the only thing I've been doing, and anything related to it becomes the most overwhelming thing at all. Um, I'm actually going to say, considering if I look back on the last couple of years, I don't recognize it at all. I have to be told. I have to be told, hey, you're randomly crying whenever anyone brings up anything to do with this sort of area of creativity. Maybe we should go for a walk or go disconnect for a while. Um, so yeah, that's a really big thing, I think, for a lot of creatives. How do you because obviously once the seed is dropped, you just go. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. But when you are sort of hyper focusing, how do you like protect that time and make sure that that hyper focus isn't disturbed?
I, um, my like mental health and the way I manage that relies on routine, lists and routine. So when it comes to if I like feel like I want to hyper focus, like I've woken up and I'm in that mood where I'm like, I can be really productive today, I can do it. I have to carve out this time is breakfast, and then you're going on your walk, and then this time is lunch, and then this time is errands or cleaning the house or whatever it is. And then this time that you can put aside for however many hours is creative. I will just, that is that time. I won't start before it and I won't finish after it. It's that allotted time, and I get very stressed out and very overwhelmed if any of that shifts. I can
Mm,
deal with a little bit of shift here and there as long as those shifts don't interrupt other scheduling things. So I think yeah, it's just locking myself away. I will just close my bedroom door. I'll get everything out that I need to get out, and I will just
yeah, I agree with that. Um, my Google Calendar is scheduled on the half hour or the hour to the point that, so say I get super locked in and I go like a minute over, I have to keep doing that for the next half hour. Um, but the other thing is, I can only give myself one task a day. So I have my to-do list for the week. But if I give myself more than one task for the day, then my brain immediately goes, too much, can't do any of it. Um, so Tuesday is podcast. And
Mhm.
then once the podcast is done, I edit the podcast. And then if there's something else I need to get done, it's on my to-do list. And if I get to it, I get to it. But it can flow into the next day. And then that's my most important task for Wednesday or something.
Mhm.
Um, I do always achieve more than just that one task I set myself, but it's just the fact that like it becomes mental clutter otherwise. Um, so taking the jump here to a different area of neurodivergence, what sensory things impact your creativity the most?
Texture. If you're trying to make me touch anything that I do not like to touch, I hate you and I think you should burn. That's a big thing. Luckily, not a whole lot of my creative world involves me touching things. I get that a lot of photographers do because they have like their sets and they have to set up props and do all of these things. Luckily, the type of photography I do doesn't involve that, so it's fine. But another one would be like clutter and mess and dirt. I'm such a clean freak and a neat freak that everything has to have its place at all times. I need to know exactly where everything is. Everything needs to be in like straight lines. If I've got posters, even as something as silly as posters, the way that people stick them up on the wall and call it a day baffles me. I have to
Mm,
have frames because frames make things look neater and I can line up frames nicely and I can straighten them and it's all great. But massive on if my area is messy, I can't do it. I can't do anything until I've cleaned
yeah,
because I just get overwhelmed.
yeah, no, 100%. For me, I can't work in silence at all. So either I'm going to a job and I've got the AirPod in, or I work from home a lot. I've got the record player right there. I've got the CD player right there. Um, but the thing that is quite difficult is I have to keep a running track of the last CD I played or the last record I played because I have all of my CDs and records sorted by artist. It's band A to Z. Then, so if I was to explain it, it's One Direction, and then
Hmm.
all of the One Direction solo members A to Z, then 5 Seconds
Hmm.
of Summer, all of their solo members A to Z, then every artist after that A to Z. Actually, Fleetwood Mac is after 5 Seconds of Summer. Then it's every artist A to Z. Um, you're questioning that.
Why would
That's
F?
why would they?
Why would F be
Because
before
one,
A?
1, 5, Fleetwood Mac. One Direction's 1, 5 Seconds to Summer's 5. Fleetwood Mac is a band that starts with F.
Right. But they're an F.
Then it's all the solo, yeah. Then it's all the solo artists, A to Z. But within the solo artists, A to Z, the CDs and records must be in chronological order.
Okay, so do you not have any other bands?
Do I not have any other bands? No, I've only got One Direction, 5 Seconds of Summer, and then Fleetwood Mac in terms of bands.
Okay. Okay.
And
now I
then
understand.
it's like my artists A to Z. But for example, I start the week. Well, actually, I've got that many CDs. I start the month on the first One Direction CD. I end the month on, it tends to be the latest Taylor Swift album. However, sometimes if I'm really feeling another artist that I don't currently have, I will switch to Apple Music and then like finish the alphabet there. Because, for example, I'm really into water parks, but I'll like slot them in because I don't have any of their CDs. Or sometimes I'll finish on Youngblood and I'll like play all his music chronologically through Apple Music. But my big thing is because usually I have like the next 4 sitting there, but then sometimes the week will end and I've put everything away and I haven't put my next one out. And I stress out. I'm like, which one was I up to? And I can't, like, I have to go back through all of my photos and check the last thing I listened to because I actually cannot handle it. So I have this thing where I am worried, like every CD, I'm worried about offending it if I play it less than my others.
Right,
like, genuinely, I was concerned. There was a point in time where I had every single 5 Seconds of Summer CD, and this is before Everyone's a Star came out. I had every single 5 Seconds of Summer CD except for Calm. I was still waiting to import it. The way I felt like I was bullying Calm because every other CD had been played, I'm just like, when it arrives, every other CD has been played more than that. I'm going to have to like play it. So I think I played only Calm for a week straight and then went back to my routine because I was
like catch it up with all the others.
Yeah, I was so worried that I'd offended it. I'm well aware you cannot offend a CD, but it's just my thing.
See, that's interesting because I can get quite overstimulated if there's too much noise. So if I'm editing photos or writing a blog post or whatever, I feel like I have to work in silence because the noises of me clicking and tapping is already a bit much. If I then add music into that, especially if it's music of an artist that I'm not writing about or editing. So if I'm like my most recent article on my website was, I think, the Everyone's a Star album review. So that meant I was listening to that album the entire time whilst I was reviewing songs. That makes sense. However, I would get really irritated if I was reviewing Everyone's a Star, the song, and it would go into Not Okay before I'd finished reviewing the song of Everyone's a Star. That would really stress me out because I'm like, no, I'm not done yet. That this is too much noise now. I'm getting really stressed. So it's interesting that you can't work without noise, but I feel like I work better with less noise.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. When it comes to reviewing an album, I review it as it drops. So, for example, just to go back to Everyone's a Star, when it dropped, I think it was midnight locally. I can't remember. I had the flu. But I was sitting there with my MacBook, had my MacBook on my bed, and then I had my phone in my notes app. And after every song, I'd pause it, I'd write my initial thoughts. I'd have like my 5 emojis that I do for every song. And I did that for Side Quest as well. And then I come back the next day and I write Wilder albums on loops to sort of see if I like missed anything. Because obviously, when you're listening to an album for the first time and it's late at night, you don't always pick up everything. But that is a good point. As much as I have to work with noise. I also can't handle if I'm writing about a song that is not the one I'm actively listening to. If I'm writing about a book or writing about a more general creative um, genre or something, I don't really care what's on in the background. I just need noise because it's the only way I can. It's the way I explain it is if you had like a broken radio and you can hear all of these little crackles, but then you like give the radio a bit of a kick and now it's just like one solid sound. That's what the music does to my brain. Is like it goes from everything to just one solid stream. So, yeah. Um, what does your ideal creative space look or feel like?
I have never thought about that ever. I don't know. Um, I mean, ideally, I'd love to have like my own place that would have my own little like studio slash study area. I think that would be really fun. I really liked at school when I studied photography, they had a proper red room where you had all the different solutions and you had to hand develop photos and stuff. That was really cool. Um, that would be a really cool thing to have. I don't know. I'm just a very like visual person, so I need it to look a way that I would want it to look, but I don't know how I want it to look until I'm in an empty space and I can go, okay, what colors do I want to include? What interior design do I want to include? Where do I want this? Where do I want this? All of these things. But like, I don't know off the bat. I think I'd have to be put in an empty space and like meditate in the middle of a room essentially and just like bring it to life.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think how I laid it out would depend on what building you give me. However, there are
Mhm.
a few things that are like non-negotiables. If I was opening my creative studio or whatever you want to call it today,
Mhm.
we have to have fairy lights. They don't have to be on at all times, but they have to be there. Um, I really want one room that's sort of almost like almost sort of like a big empty warehouse because you can control the lighting rather than having like especially because I live on the west coast and some days it's just like grey and cloudy even though it's summer like wearing a hoodie in the middle of summer you wouldn't know. um I've just an empty warehouse that you can bring the lighting into, you can put the backdrop up, you can sort of move the set, you can bring more props in. um but then also I'd want my actual office space to I'm someone who has to move around to like multiple different ways of working. So I might sit at a desk and type something, and then I'm lying on the floor to type something, and then I'm moving around the room holding a phone and doing a voice note. Like I need a fairly big space where I can just like adapt to whatever that project is. So that's one thing I've thought about a lot. Do you create to process life, to escape life, or to connect with people?
Hmm. I think all of the above. I think I, again, I'm always going to go back to my photography because that's the most consistent creative thing I do. But like, obviously, that's a big, when you're in crowds like that, there is a like an inevitability that you are going to connect with people there. Like, be that other photographers or specifically photographers you've seen in other pits before that you're like, oh my God, it's you again. Hey. Or the fans on the barrier when you're trying to take photos. Sometimes you get lucky and you get like a fun little connection with the artist that you can capture. That's great. Um, but concerts in general are somewhere where I go to escape life. So I think that's kind of a two for one in that sense. And then I don't really know. I think the blogging is more processing life because that's more of the actual like internal thoughts and how I feel about the music industry or how I feel about albums I'm listening to or whatever. My blog is still it's still a baby, so, you know, early days. But I think that's more of the processing part of it, but a lot of it is escapism and connection for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I feel like every different art form I do, because I can't just stick to just one, has its own purpose. So I process life through my photography. Then when I talk about escaping life, I do that quite often in poetry, which never sees the light of day. But in terms of connecting with people, I find that even though I want to do that with my photography, I actually find that the blog posts do it more because there's nothing quite like someone being excited that you're talking about the same art that they love. But no, I want that for my photography, and I still do get that. I really appreciate seeing that with the blog post and being like the creative community that so often feels hidden in these small rural spaces. It's still there. It's still thriving. So yeah. Do you feel like you mask in creative spaces, or how do you think these neurodiverse situations like play into your creative situations?
I, the only place I ever mask is in customer service. I'm quite brutal and upfront and honest in every aspect of my life, and I'm very much um I kind of shift the responsibility onto the other person where I'm like, I'm going to be 100% authentically myself. If you don't like that, that's on you. That's for you to deal with. I'm not going to change myself or shift myself or manipulate anything about myself to fit how you think I should be. Be that it's friends, it's family, it's strangers online, it's strangers in a photo pit. I don't care. I'm 100% authentically me because then nothing gets misconstrued. So then if one person's like, "Oh, did you see that she said this?" and then another person is like, "I didn't, but yeah, that sounds like something she'd say." It's all very like just kind of understood across the board who I am as a person, how I act, how I talk, all of these things. So I don't think I mask unless I'm in customer service and I have to put on my pretty voice and smile more. But no, I don't think I mask.
Yeah. Um, Running a company, I found it very hard at first not to mask because I went into this thinking if you are 100% truly you, you're going to scare the people when you send off the PR emails. Um, However, what I actually found is the second, because I would, you email the PR teams for people being like, hey, can we connect for this thing? And you feel the pressure to be super like formal, put together. But then you like DM an artist who maybe you've worked with on some other thing, like, hey, I photographed for you, but I haven't like interviewed you. And you know that that creative work like thinks the same as you. And so you send them a message in your normal unmasked self. The second I realized that those messages got more attention and was more appreciated than the hi, I'm being super formal. This is written as if it's a template and every single person sees the same thing. They don't want that. The people are looking for human connection, especially in a time of AI, where you could just be sending out the same thing. You could be asking a bot to be like, ask blank if you can interview blank, or ask blank if you can be in the photo pit for blank. Don't like, I used to think that the mask was necessary to cope in a very business centric world. Um, it's not. And that has been the great thing about this whole experience with the Groovy Moo is realizing that neurodiverse or not, every creative has their own unique way that they think, and they appreciate it when you are just you. Like if I get some super formal email being like, "Hello, I have seen your work," I might open it. If it's a light week, I might open it. Um, However, if I get some young teenager messaging me super excited, being like, how did you do this? Or can you talk to me about your creative process? I will always open an enthusiastic message Even if I sort of look at it and go, okay, this is not a situation that I can take on, I will always at
Mhm.
least open it because you can see that the person really genuinely means it. So I 100% agree. You can't have the mask. Yeah. But have you ever, like, I've sort of talked about that pressure in the PR situations. Have you ever, like, felt the pressure to be like a more palatable version of yourself as an artist?
I think early on, yes. I think early on I was much more um, reserved. I wouldn't say I masked at all, but I think I would just be shorter with my responses and the quieter and just like just don't overstep, don't be too loud, don't take up too much space because like you're very new to this. Don't piss anyone off. Um, and then I think as I got older, as I grew up in the space, as I was just doing more and got more experience, I was like, oh, actually, no one cares. No one cares how much space you take up. No one cares um, how loud you are about things. If they know you, or you know them, or you have a relationship with someone else that they know, and you kind of circle around the same bubble, then like you're chill, you're vibing. It's fine. Um, recently, like more recently, no, I don't feel like I've had to be more palatable or had to make myself smaller in any way to be a different version of me. But I do think earlier on, I tried to not step on anyone's toes and to not ask too many questions and just to not do too much because I was worried that I'd get kicked out of a space before I was really in it. Um, realizing no, that the louder you are, the more questions you ask, the more responsive people are actually going to be to you.
Yeah. Going back to something you said, that really reminds me. Um, when I was part of Lloyd's workshop, I remember the day, and it was an early in the morning one because of the time difference. So I think I'd woken up about 4 in the morning because he was traveling at that time. And you wake up and you see that the stream is titled "Nobody Cares About You."
Mm-hmm.
And as a creative, to see that that's the topic, you're like, "Yeah, I woke up at 4 a.m. for this. I'm a head out." But I
Mm-hmm.
stayed. And his point actually was, you as creatives and also just generally as people on the internet, we spend so much time worrying about, have I got, the perfect body for this outfit? Have I got the aesthetic Instagram feed? Have I got? But every person is worrying about that. So if you stop and think about the fact that every person is worrying about, have I got, then I'm not sitting there going, oh, this creative that I've just scrolled across, look at that. The first three photos that they've taken have red lighting, and the fourth photo has blue lighting. How dare they cancel her? No, I'm busy thinking, I haven't had a photo opportunity since I think it was March. No one's going to care because I haven't been relevant. I haven't been posting. I'm not thinking that photographer that I shot with last month never lines their posts up properly. It's that moment you realize that nobody cares and you just do
Mm-hmm.
your thing is the most freeing moment a creative can have. Yeah. So we've talked about being authentic, but what does authenticity look like to you as a creative?
I think it's about being unapologetic. Um, obviously, if you do something shady, apologize. If you genuinely mess up, apologize and take accountability. But you should never apologize for the way you work. Um, as long as you get the results out of it, like fine. If you go into a photo pit and say I don't have a camera, I'm just going to take pictures on my phone and you're going to deal with it and I'm not going to post them and they're going to be crap, then like don't be an idiot, right? But if you have your genuine like real true intentions and you're just putting good out, you're going to get that back. And I think to be authentic is to just be yourself and to be unapologetically yourself. Um, because I don't think earlier on in life I was that. I did think I used to try and fit in, too much with too many different types of people that I really had no idea who I was, what I was into. Nothing. I was just like, oh, but the popular girls are doing this, but the edgy girls are doing this, but then the boys like this, but then the girls like this, and it's like, wait, who am I? What am I doing? Where is this going? Um, I think taking time to find yourself and love yourself and develop that personality and that style. Not only just that style and like what you're creating, but that style in your fashion and how you present yourself. I think they are always to be authentic, and I think they're always to make yourself stand out because you don't want to be like anyone else. Trust, you don't want to be like anyone else.
No.
You don't want to seem like you're copying anyone else. You don't want to seem like you are trying to be someone else. Just be real, whatever that is to you, be that.
Yeah. For me, authenticity is everything you've just said. Um, the biggest thing that I used to struggle with is I would never ask for an opportunity because I believed if I am good enough, the opportunity will be there. There's nothing scary about a no. There's nothing scary about being told no. What is scary is staying exactly where you are because you were afraid to ask. For every opportunity I've had like at least a dozen no's before then. But
Mm-hmm.
in a week, you send out 10 emails asking for different press passes. One person says yes. In a week, you ask about 12 different people if you can interview one of their artists. One person says yes. And all it takes is that one yes to like really get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is don't try and do what other people are doing because I have seen so many people who are like, how did you get this opportunity? And then they'll send an email that is an exact copy.
Mm-hmm.
Just like anytime I compare notes with any creative about what we're doing, and someone's, especially like the younger, freshly starting out creatives, and they're like, does this look okay? Yes, like be be formal, be sensitive to the situation you're in. Don't just be like, sup, bro, can I interview you tomorrow? Like, not going to get you anywhere. So, but if you are truly if you truly want it, a person can pick up on that. And if you've got like a solid portfolio behind you, people pick up on that. Just not being scared to like try something, taking risks. Take your camera to that local event, build a portfolio with that. From there, pitch to an artist for a big festival rather than like a little local one. Just not being scared to get the no is, yeah.
I also think as well that a lot of the times don't take the no's personally. People aren't looking at people aren't looking at your portfolio and then going, that's disgusting, that's horrible, I hate that, that's ugly. No. They're likely going, that's great, we just don't have space for you. Like, sorry, we can't
Mm.
make it work. It's not against you, it's not against your art, it's just that other people have already asked and other people got in there earlier. That's not your fault, that's not their fault, that's not really anyone's fault, and it's not a personal attack on you or your art. It's just, no, sorry, we can't accommodate this right now, rather than no, that's ugly.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
creating that disconnect is really important.
Yes. The amount of times that you will get an email that says something like, love your work, don't have the capacity right now. And then months down the line, hey, we have this project. Do you want to work with us? Or you'll get something that's like, hey, that's not kind of the vibe we're going for this time.
Hmm.
Or maybe you just like won't get a response. Follow up. Maybe because these people get a lot of messages. The amount of times that I follow up and then someone's like, not this project, but we are starting this project and we do need someone, you got in first. The thing you have to consider that, like I 100% agree with you, is this is the amount of opportunities, this is the amount of people applying. Like
Hmm.
that means that not everyone's going to get to do it. It's a really tough area. It's really competitive, but it's not a reflection on you at all. And if you keep showing up, the people who seem to like last the longest are the people who adapt and keep showing up. That's been me on the mic this week. Have a groovy week.